This week we're going to take a look at, in Module 3, doing a little bit more with programming and introducing to variables, operators, different data types of variables, etc. So I'm going to launch JGrasp just to show you a few things. So JGrasp, as you recall, is very light, and it's navigating to the last folder where I'd saved my hello world. So I'm going to make a new Java file here, and it's a good practice, and one thing I look for you with your projects is to give me block comments, which you may recall block comments are delineated with a / asterisk, and then they end with asterisk / So just make sure when you give me projects you put inside them your name, date, file name, which is going to be that Java file, and then just a brief description, of what the file does. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is I'm going to create a class, and I'm going to call this variable practice. And this is going to be a class, so I have a left curly bracket and put a right curly bracket. So I put a couple lines just to give myself some grace. Notice this file's not been saved yet. You can see in the upper right hand corner I haven't saved it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save this right away. That way I don't lose anything. I'm saving it. I have a folder set up for all my Java projects. I call it JGrasp stuff. You can call it Java projects, whatever you want. I think it's a good idea to save that in a folder for CIS 106. So you can see it's actually already finding the file name because that's what I called the class. Those two things have to match. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. That way I can just resave it. So what I need inside the class, I'm going to hit the tab key because I want to indicate that what is between this left and right curly bracket is what's going to happen when I run this file. But I want to hit the tab key because, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. What I want to do is I want to indicate that I have a process inside here. So I'm going to go down one line, hit the tab key to indent one level, and I'm going to call this, it's going to be public static void main string square bracket arbs. And again, it has a left and right curly brace to indicate what's inside it. So this is a lot to type. I realize that. You've seen this before. This is nothing new. You're going to have to do this pretty much for most of your projects. And this will make more sense down the road. Just know that the keyword public, it's changing color because it's a reserved word. Java says, hey, this is a word that has special meaning to me. Class is also a reserved word for Java, as is static, as is void. And these words will not make a lot of sense yet, but they will down the road. Variable practice, I came up with that name as developer. I'm calling this file, I'm calling my class variable practice. So the file name must be variable practice.java. Main, this essentially right here, this is a process. This is kind of a subroutine. It's really a method. Some programming languages will call it function, but it's a subroutine that Java is going to look for this when it runs its files, when it runs a program. It's going to say, where's main, where's main? And it sees this, and it says, what's inside main? That's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to do what's inside main. Now, what is in between these left and right parentheses, this is not going to make sense for a few weeks yet, but it will down the road. Because when we talk about functions and methods, we'll get into that. So inside main, what I want to do is I'm going to create a variable, which is a little bit different from me. I'm going to create a variable that's going to store, say, a user's name. So I'm going to create a string, and a string is a type of variable, it's a type of data that will store anything. Anything's fair game. And I'm going to call this, it's going to be name, and I'm going to assign it the value of William. So a couple things to point out with this. So the type of data here is a string. String is anything's fair game. Letters, characters, spaces, numbers, anything can be a string. Really, a string is meant to be words, is what it's usually for. This is the name of the variable. I called this variable name because I'm going to store a user's name. So the reason why the identifier or name of the variable is name is because that's what it does. It stores a person's name. This equal sign means assignment. means assignment. So in other words, the variable name, which is a string data type, gets, this equal sign means gets, it gets this value. Now this is a string, so I have to put it inside double quotations. So anything's for a game in here. Java always says when you end a statement, you must end with a semicolon. So this is a variable called name, string data type. It gets the value of William. I'm going to create another variable to store a user's age, and I'm going to call this int. I'm sorry, it's a data type of int, and it's called age. And I'm going to assign it a number. So this variable called age, I as a developer, I'm coming up with that identifier, that variable name, and I'm calling it age, and it is a data type that is an int. Int is for an integer, a whole number. So this variable age is of data type int, and it gets 26. Notice I'm ending with a semicolon. That's Java's requirement. So now what I can do with this is I could do just some output. I could do system.out.print line, this is ln, and I could just do something like, say I want to print a user's name. On the next line, I could do, I'm just going to copy and paste this and replace it with age. On the next line, I could print a user's age. So now when I run this, what I should see, I have to save it first. I'm going to save this and then run. And what I should see at the bottom is the user's name and then age. Notice that it does age on the next line, because what print line does, print line will print whatever's inside here and then automatically go to the next line. So it'll then be set to go on this next line for the next output. Now I could dress this up and I could say something like your name is, and I can add special output. I can say your name is, and I can continue my output with this plus sign. So this plus sign here is not really adding, it's not doing addition. It's a fancy term called concatenation, which basically means that I'm going to continue my output with what is stored in the variable name. And what is stored in the variable name? William. So this should, I'm going to save this, keyboard shortcut, and then I'm going to run, and this should say your name is William. And I of course could do the same thing for age. And I can concatenate output and do the same thing for that output. So what else can we do with this? Well, we can do all kinds of things. Like say, I don't know, say I wanted to do this all in one line. I'm going to go ahead and comment out this one line momentarily because I'm going to come back to that. If I want to do this with one print statement, but I want to put the output for your ages on the next line, I can use a print statement, which is a simple print statement, and I can concatenate a \n, which is an escape sequence. Escape sequences are useful if you want to do some kind of, you want to kind of break the regular output flow of the program. And I'll come back and explain some of that here in a second. And then I could do this on the next line. So n, escape n, means go to the next line. Because this is now a print statement, which is all one line. And I'm going to concatenate the word age. So this is really not the best example. I probably wouldn't do this normally, but this should still do the same output, but I have one line of code. And what this is doing is this escape n, this \n, this says, hey Java, break out of your normal flow, or escape out of your normal flow, and do what this thing says. That n means new line. So another example of where you might run into using escape sequences, and there's many different, well, not many, but there's several different escape characters. Let me just comment this out and show you another example real quick of where you might have an example of where you might need to use escape sequences. If I have something like, I want to say Lincoln said, and I want to display this comma, and 7 years ago, I'm just going to type all that out, but I want to display, not a comma, sorry, if I want to display this double quotation mark, I can't do that because Java thinks, well, this double quotation mark is the end of your output, your literal output. So it thinks doesn't know what to do with this. Like if I save this and go to run it, it's going to give me an error. Well, it's supposed to give me an error because it doesn't really know what to. You can see it. There's the error right there. Let me see if I can enlarge that. Sorry, my little new to JGrass. So. I can't really anymore. Oh, I can. Beautiful. So you can see it saying variable practice Java 17 error. Well, what's that? So Java 17 is line 17 saying you got an error right there. It doesn't really make quite sense. So it didn't actually give me output. It's saying you got a problem with this. It doesn't tell me exactly what it is. It's saying I expected the end of your output. It really expected the end of output right there. It doesn't know what to do with this. But I want to display that double quotation, so I can use an escape character to do that. And then I can do another one to display this double quotation and end my output here. So now this will display the actual quotation marks, which is kind of what I want to do, just to show you an example. So there's other escape sequences, and these are just examples of what you can do with them. So a couple of things, I just want to go back to our class. So you can see that it's talking about data types, operators. Let me just dive back in here and show you a few of the things. So the data types that we see here is a string and an int. So an int is a whole number. There's other data types you will run into. You'll run into a data type such as a double. So a double can be something like a GPA. So if I want to store my GPA, say it's like 3.42, so that would have to be something that is a decimal-based number. There's many other types of data. There's data types such as a char. Char might be something like an individual letter. In Java, chars have to be created with single quotations. Single quotations. Chars must be created with single quotation marks. So like if you have a single character, in this case it is a letter, it could really be anything. I could even have, I don't know why I do this, I could have the number 8, but it has to be a single character. If I try to do more than that, then the Java's going to bark at that. So a char is a type of data that is a single character. Another data type you might run into is that of Boolean. Boolean is a true or false value. This is a little odd. So if I have something like it's raining, well actually today it actually is raining right at this moment when I'm making this video. So this is a data type. It's a type of data in Java. So Boolean is a data type, and this is the name of my variable. And Boolean is set to the word true or false. It's kind of like on or off, 1 or 0, true or false. So Boolean is, whatever you call it, again this is the name of the variable, whatever Boolean is, it's going to be the word true or the word false, because it's a true or false value. Probably not going to use these a whole lot, but you will see them in programs. Now there's many other data types that exist out there, and I'm sure that you'll read in this module, it'll explain the different variables and data types you'll see out there. So it talks about things, here's a char, double, talks about a float. I don't use floats that much, but they're out there. A float is like a double, it's just it stores less, has less memory available to it than a double. So there's other data types like a short and a long, and a byte. So the reason why Java has all these different data types is because sometimes you don't want to set aside a ton of memory if you're not going to use it. Like for example, it says a byte will hold 8 bits, which will represent integers between -128 and 127. So let's say I want to create some variable to store a calendar month. Well, you know it's never going to go over 12. The number is never going to, it's going to be anything between 1 and 12. So why would you use an int when an int can go all the way to, what is this, 2,147,483,647? You're never going to go above 12. So in that case, you could use a byte. I will probably not for the scope of this class, but I'm just pointing that out to you because really it's a matter of how much memory space do you want to consume on your computer. So you want to read through this and learn a little bit more about the different data types that exist in Java. Other things to look at is things like how we can create variables. So when you create variable names, there are conventions and things that you have to do when you create a variable. So like for example, let me go back to my program. If I try to create a variable, say I want to use age, and I want to call it something like my space age. Well, you can't do that in Java because Java says, well, you know, I don't know what that is. I thought you were done. So you can't use spaces in variable names. You also cannot start a variable name with a number in Java. And this is what a convention with most programming languages. So you can say it's given me a fit with this because I'm starting the variable name with a number. So there are certain rules of what you can and cannot do when you create variables. And it may not say that in this article, but you will encounter that. So this article also talks about the option, the concept of assignment. So one equal sign means assignment. You're assigning a value. You can also change values of a variable. So here they're even showing you how I create a variable here called a. It's an integer, 5. I have another variable b, which is assigned the value of a. So now a and b they're equal. In other words, they're assigned the same value. But then I change the value of a. Notice I do not need the word int again. And that's because when I make this statement, I declare and initialize. Just saying int a alone, that alone sets aside the memory space for this memory box. When you assign it a value, now it has a memory box that has a value assigned to it. So when I make this statement, I am reassigning the value of a to 3. So you do not need to create a whole new memory space for the same variable. In fact, if you do this, Java's going to get confused. So, well, you already have the variable a. Why do you need to tell me it's an int? I already know that. Why do you need to set aside new memory space? So just be careful for that. With that, sorry. So then they talk about printing output, printing variables. I've sort of shown you a little bit of that. And then we get into the concept of arithmetic operators, meaning how do we add, subtract, divide, multiply things. So let's take a quick look at that. So let's say that I want to I want to change my GPA. I'm going to comment out these lines of code. I don't want to delete it in case you guys want to go back and see what's happening. So I'm not going to run these just momentarily, but I am going to comment them out. So I'm going to create yet one more output for my GPA. And so let's see, my GPA is, I'm going to print my GPA just to show you what that does. So I can see down here it prints my, well, it should, because I enlarged it. So it should, there it is, GPA is 3.42. Well, if I change the value of my GPA, let's say that I say GPA is now going to be assigned, or reassigned really in this case, because it was already assigned here. I'm going to reassign it, whatever it was, plus 0.3. So I'm going to add 0.3 to my GPA, and then I'm going to display it after I reassign it. Let's see what this does. So now you can see my GPA was 3.42, and now it's 3.7199999998. So this is a great example of what can happen with doubles. So a double is a very specific, Java's trying to be very precise. It's storing, it's set aside to store as big of a precise a number as it can. So it has more memory space. So Java's trying to give me a very, very, very precise answer. For right now, not a big deal. There are ways to do formatting, and we'll read about that. So for right now, when you run into something like this, I am okay with this. Just be aware, sometime you might do some kind of monetary assignment, and you wouldn't want money to go, you know, I gave you change of $3.71999998. It would just be 72 cents. So I'll show you ways we can round that out and format that. So we can also look at some other information here about input and output. I've talked a little bit about that. So they talk about the scanner class. I'm going to make another video on scanner. The scanner is a huge thing, which we won't really need yet, but you'll learn about it. So you have to read about the other arithmetic operators. So just be familiar with some of this. I'll make some other videos explaining some of that. So make sure you start to read through these articles, and I'll be back and make another video to talk about arithmetic operators as well as the scanner class.